what we've built as a team here, for me the most rewarding part is like seeing the guests enjoying the food, the drinks, and just their experience in Lana. Like that's the most rewarding for me. And I finish every day and I'm just like, wow, I'm really stoked that people are having a good time and enjoying the food.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. During the early 2000s, the media got in a fluff about fusion food, about mix and matching different cuisines, and the relatively low success rate. But just about every household in Australia does this, trying new dishes, learning new food of their heritage and finding ways to spice up the daily dinner. What impact does this have on those that forge careers as a chef? Alex Wong is the head chef of Lana Dining at Hinchcliffe House in Sydney. Alex, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
It's good to get you on the show. You're head chef of Lana Dining at Hinchcliffe House, which is, got a lot of media and like amazing venue in the heart of Sydney. What's things like at the moment?
Oh, it's full on. Things have been picking up like tremendously. We're full almost every service this week. Tell us
a little bit about Lana Dining. What are you doing there?
So in Lana, the inspiration behind Lana is basically we're in a heritage building, and it's called Hinchcliffe House, and originally, a long time ago, it was owned by Andrew Hinchcliffe, who used to import wool from Italy. So I import wool to Italy, and that's hence the name Lana. Lana in Italian means wool. So the inspiration of Lana is a sort of a Italian-ish pescatarian osteria restaurant with a bit of Asian influence. I'm using a lot of flavors from my heritage, as well as a lot of flavors inspired by Sydney in general. Yeah.
This is something that you're quite familiar with. When you were young, this is something that happened in your family household. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, correct. Yeah. So when I ate a lot of growing up, my mum would cook something westernized on the weekends. So instead of just Chinese-Vietnamese food, she westernized like her version of spaghetti bolognese. But it wasn't really spaghetti bolognese. It was really bad overcooked spaghetti with a sort of like a sauteed beef mince and tomato paste seasoned with Maggi soy sauce. So it was like every now and then we should fry an egg as well on top. So it was kind of weird, but I guess as a kid I didn't know any better and I enjoyed it.
How is that translating in at Lana Dining? There's that Italian influence, but you're bringing in some Asian ingredients as well. Give us a sense of how that works.
So I try to take inspiration from classic Italian dishes, and I amp up the flavor with a bit of Asian ingredients, such as like I used to do. Before on the previous menu, we did a little aquapazza dressing inspired by the crazy water dressing in the fishermen used to catch snapper on the boats in the Amalfi Coast and make a little a crazy water sauce out of that. I infuse tomato water with basil, a bit of steam, like it was for a mussel dish, so I used to steam mussels and use that liquor, blend it with tomato water and season it with a bit of dashi and basil. Yeah.
I want to explore what you're doing on the menu there in detail soon, but you briefly touched on when you were young, but take us back to when you were young. What sort of role did food play in your family growing up?
Oh, we food was like a main thing for us. Like we would always have celebrations. Every birthday would be eating something. Like if we weren't eating out of the local Chinese restaurant owned by my uncle or something like that, we'd be going to pubs and having steak and like just food was everything for us. Like I just have many fond memories of going to the Chinese restaurant and getting live seafood and all that, even though I didn't actually eat seafood as a kid because I just didn't like the smell of fish until I became a chef. When I was my early teens, I became a chef and I was like, what have I been missing out for my whole life eating seafood?
Are there any sort of dishes or feasts from the family home that you remember that you can share with us?
Oh yes, like early before I became a teenager, when my grandmother was still around, we used to go over there at Christmas time, and like my family is heavily Christian background, not so much anymore, but back in those days, yeah. So we'd have a feast, like a kind of a semi-Australian Chinese Christmas. There'd be like cooked king prawns. My grandma would like steam whole fish, or there's always a steamed whole fish. With the soy and shallots and ginger, and then every now and then we'd go get a lobster, and my grandma would try and stir fry lobster. Wasn't very good sometimes, but it was just a good way to bring the whole family together. We didn't see each other that often.
When did you first start getting interested in food and think about it as a potential career?
Well, actually, I've always loved food. Like I grew up in Newcastle. My best friend was Italian in primary school, and I used to go to his nonna's house and have just a pasta napoletana. And there'd always be panna di casa on the table, fresh bread, and she used to grow everything in her backyard. Olive oil, you harvest her own olive oil, preserved tomatoes, have basil growing, and it was mind blowing for me. And that's when I sort of started. Like I really loved food more, but then it wasn't until I actually became a teenager, I dropped out of school, the usual story, and I had no interest in studying at all. And I pursued a few other things that didn't work out, and I saw an ad for apprentice chef, and I went for it. And I was really addicted to the camaraderie and the adrenaline in the kitchen. And it was only about a few years after I was an apprentice, I was like, you know what? I actually enjoy creating like specials and like making dishes that people enjoy, and that's where I sort of decided to myself, I'm going to put my foot down, actually work hard at this and progress. I want to do something good in the future.
In those early years, what were the really important sort of mentors and venues that you worked at that helped you sort of come to that decision and start forging a career?
So I was younger. I was a bit scared to actually work in those hatted restaurants, and so I worked in a lot of sort of mediocre like pubs and all that stuff, and then it was very boring for me. I just needed to get out. So eventually I mustered up the courage, and I got my job in a restaurant called at the time it was called the Welcome Hotel, a pub, but inside the restaurant there was a 40-seater fine diner called Ayo. In Sardinian, Ayo means let's go, like let's go. And the chef at the time was Daniel Mulligan. He was a ex Pilo Freshwater. He opened Pilu with Giovanni in the early days, and he'd spent almost a decade there, and he had enough, so he left and he took over this pub, and I was blown away because that's where we used to make all the pasta from scratch. And so on one side we were doing the bar food as well as doing degustation out of the same kitchen. So it was like very hands-on, very small team. The kitchen was the size of no bigger than my bedroom. It was just tiny, but that was where I could like maximize my potential and learn as much as I could. And it was I do not regret doing that, and that's changed my career, has shaped my career.
What did you take from that time of working with Daniel in such a small, intense environment, doing such quality food?
He taught me that taught me the creative aspect. There's always something you can use that can be turned into something good, like scraps, for example. Why are we throwing this out when we could be making something out of it? What I'm trying to say is sustainability. I learned a lot about sustainability. Yeah.
Where did that job lead to for you? What did you do next?
So after that, I opened a restaurant. It was called Allegra. I opened it with a school friend a long time ago. Didn't work out very well, but that's where I started. Actually, that's where I started playing around with Asian flavors with Italian cuisine. That's where I started. So I think it wasn't really like the strongest part of my career, but it helped me grow as a chef and learn. I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned from it. And then after that, I'll fast forward a little bit here. Before Lana, and between that was Osteria de Russo and Russo. So I've always dreamed of working there because I just loved at the time when Jason Saxby opened it. The food was that's the food I wanted to cook. Like it was Italian flavors, so in contemporary way, using Australian native ingredients, which I've still kind of new to me at the time, and I was really inspired by that. So I eventually got there in the end as head chef. It was approximately 2019 when I took over. There was a few chefs after Jason, but that's where I sort of grew the most before I came to Lana.
It's an amazing venue, Osteria de Russo and Russo, and they do extraordinary things there. Tell us about your time in that kitchen and the ability that it gave you to explore Italian but bring in those Asian influences and find your voice.
I loved it to the fact because it was the owners they gave me a brief and I followed it. With that brief, it was mainly it wasn't strictly Italian. It was contemporary Italian. When I used to infuse a bit of white soy there, yuzu kosho here and there, and like it wasn't until like the second year. It was after lockdown. We reopened again finally, and I went hard out and I just started like I went outside my comfort zone and I think before I started they weren't actually doing too many flavors with too many things with Asian flavors, and I started putting a bit more, but in the way it still kept the respect to Italy, and it worked.
Are there any dishes that stand out from your time there that really exemplify what you were doing?
Yes, we had a squid tagliolini pasta that I couldn't take off the menu because once it went on the menu, I couldn't take it off. It was very hard to replace. Yeah. So originally the base was a mussel butter that I infused with a bit of dashi. Yeah, and then we said with Spanish crab and chili. That was pretty much it. We use a Calabrian chili paste and the mussel butter dashi as the base of it.
What's some of the common threads in regards to Italian food and Asian food that allow you to create these sort of amazing dishes and be so harmonious?
When you look at it, it seems like it doesn't make sense sometimes. But some Italian dishes, they have like natural umami. The term umami has been commonly used these days, but that sort of umami you get from porcini mushrooms and Parmigiano Reggiano or Putaga, for example, the dried mullet roe. Like you find that in some Asian cuisines. I mean, in Italy, they have the Italy's version of fish sauce will be colatura di alici, which I find is a bit more it's sharp. It's a bit more. There's a bit more depth in flavor, but it's less salty compared to the standard Asian fish sauce.
What is it about Italian cuisine that really captured your attention?
I really enjoyed the feasts that when you go to an Italian restaurants, you start with your antipasti and small goods like salumi and stuff, and then you go onto the that's like the entree, and then the second course is like that's like the snacks, and then the first course is a pasta, and then you go from pasta you go into mains, and it's like a whole long lunch. I really like that way of eating for me, and I just love this spirit of generosity, and I really love pasta. That's one of my things. Like as a kid, I love pasta, no matter what pasta, short, long pasta. I loved it. And I feel like, Asians, we eat noodles, right? And I used to take that inspiration when I make a pasta dish. Like, how can I make this pasta dish like a bit more Asian without making it too Asian, making it still respecting Italy in a way. So that's one of the reasons why I love Italian cuisine so much. And I love the diverse regions as well. Like there's so many regions that in Italy that I haven't even explored yet in cuisines.
What's the secret to making great pasta? Do you have a technique that you use in the restaurant?
I tell my chefs this all the time. It's like you have to have a great sauce. The pasta has to be good as well, but doesn't regardless of the pasta being good and the sauce being good. It's also the care you take in finishing the pasta. In Italians, they call mantecare, so they toss the pasta to release the starch and first. But obviously the sauce has to be right before you do that. And like it's just the way the care involved in monteing the sauce and tossing it. That just adds that's pretty much adds to the mouthfeel and the texture of the sauce as well, and the presentation. So that's very important.
This episode is proudly supported by Montague, handpicked for you.
The things that we're really looking for in plums, first of all, they've got to be sweet. We're really looking for a full flavour explosion in our plums. Red flesh is critically important to us, higher in antioxidants, so all that good stuff. And then we're also looking at a slightly firmer texture. So there's almost a little crunch. That's the real driver for us.
For more information, go to montague.com.au.
How did the job at Lana come about?
I have to thank Stephen from Flying Fish for that. Stephen Seckle. I think he was on the show a while back as well. He found me at Russo, and then he really I think he really enjoyed the meal there, and he reached out. And at the time, I was like, you know what, I think I'm ready to take the next step into something new and exciting.
Coming out of sort of turbulent times, what was it like putting together, being part of this incredible venue and building a team and taking that next step? Take us through it.
It was super exciting. It was super, super exciting. I've never done something on such a large scale. I've opened a restaurant in the past, and it wasn't easy, but this opening Lana wasn't easy either. But we got there in the end. We actually opened quite rushed, and then lockdown happened. So about 2 months after, a month and a half after opening, the second lockdown came. Yeah, it wasn't exactly what we had planned for or hoped for, but it really was a blessing in disguise for us.
Take us through that. What do you mean by blessing in disguise? What did it allow you to do, closing such a short time after opening?
So closing after a short time, it allowed us to actually fix all the problems, any problems that had occurred when we rushed the opening. It also like sort of streamlined the menu into a more of a format that suits the dining room as well as the clientele base that we were attracting, and it was really beneficial to me rebuilding the team as well. I mean, it wasn't ideal, but it happened, and I'm grateful for that.
Tell us a bit about how you create dishes. Where does it begin? Does it start with Italian food or Asian ingredients? And is there one or two examples of dishes that you can take us through that sort of speak of the process?
I try to, when I come up with a dish, I try to look at what's in season and what's good in the next few weeks coming up in the veg markets or even in the fish markets. And then I sort of like, I use that, and I try to find a traditional Italian dish that I can tweak a bit and make it Lana-esque in a way. For example, a few weeks ago, I'm getting some meat from Vic's, and they said, I've got this lovely kangaroo tail. I know it's coming to summer, but it's still cold, so why not? I put that on the menu. But I was like, how do I make a ragu out of that? How do I make it Asian? So I mean, I think back to my partner's Korean, so I think back to like a humble Korean dish they make, and it's a dish that's made with pork neck bones and other bits and pieces, and they braise it down in like a soup, and they finish that. It's usually quite spicy, and they finish it off with sesame leaf powder and fresh sesame leaf, which is also known as green shiso. And I've used that inspiration to make a kangaroo tail ragu, but we've seasoned the kangaroo tail ragu with a bit of brown rice miso at the end. So it's cooked off very traditionally in wine and vegetables and all that. And then I finish with brown rice miso, and to water we finish with a bit of butter, parmes, and we actually have some fresh green shiso leaf that we chiffonade on top, and some ume roasted sesame seeds. So it's kind of the gnocchi is Italian, but also that using inspiration from that Korean dish is like a dish of humble braised pork stew with potatoes inside. So if that makes sense, it doesn't really sound like it makes sense, but for me, it somehow makes sense. But when you taste it, it's actually quite nice. It's quite nice and herbaceous from the shiso.
If you ever think about sort of what you were like and how you ran your team at Allegro all those years ago compared to, these days at Lana, do you operate differently and run your kitchen differently to back then?
I like to say, I think I've always actually run the team kind of the same. I've been a bit stricter these days in Lana, that's for sure, because I have such a bigger team. It's double the size of what it used to be at Russo and Allegro and all that. So I'd like to say I've changed a little bit since then. I've always tried to have a bit of fun in the kitchen and try to build a really strong team by we'll get along. We're like a little family because we see each other day in, day out for like at least 50 hours a week. We see each other probably more than our own partners. And yeah, always I want to make a fun environment, but still everyone has to understand that, we've got a job to do.
What's it like being part of such a big offering and so many different offerings within a large venue? Does the team all sort of get together with a common goal? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, so in Hinchcliffe House, it's quite large. There's 3 venues in there, and the restaurant downstairs is called Grana. We work with the chefs alongside the chefs. Sometimes we share the building with them, and we share a dry store with them, share a cool room with them, pretty much. So we all get along. We all hang out on the weekends every now and then, and there's always sometimes we even like we swap the chefs around to help each other out. So we have a really good. I think we have a really good family community here, and yeah.
Well, you're doing amazing things there, and I know you're just getting started, but what do you love about what you do?
I love what I can do. I love what I do because I don't think there's actually too many restaurants like Lana currently, and what we've built as a team here. I like to. For me, the most rewarding part is like seeing the guests enjoying the food, the drinks, and just their experience in Lana. Like that's the most rewarding for me. And I finish every day, and I'm just like, wow, I'm really stoked that people are having a good time and enjoying the food.
Well, Alex, it's an absolute pleasure to catch up with you today on Deep in the Weeds. Good luck with Lana in the coming year or two as you really stretch your arms out and do some amazing things. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
No worries. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.